I think I have to go my own way.
Dude, we've been here doing this for 14 years.
The last 5 felt like 20.
Before we dive in, ask yourself this. How does a man go from building a car empire on national television to quietly fading from the spotlight? Richard Rawlings had it all: fame, fortune, and fast cars. But somewhere along the way, the gas ran out. What really happened when the cameras stopped rolling? Stick around to find out. And if you're drawn to the real stories behind fame and fortune, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell, because this is one you won't want to miss. Richard Rawlings, the charismatic face behind Gas Monkey Garage, and the hit show Fast and Loud, once lived life in the fast lane, literally and figuratively. From flipping classic cars to building a multi-million-dollar brand, Rawlings embodied the American dream. But behind the roaring engines and the glow of reality TV, the road took a sharp turn. When the spotlight faded, Richard was left facing a quieter, more uncertain chapter. Financial setbacks, failed ventures, and personal struggles began to shadow the empire he built with grit and gasoline. Now, at 56, the man once known for his high-octane hustle is learning that real strength isn't measured in horsepower, but in how you survive when the ride slows down. This is the untold story of Richard Rawlings, the rise, the fall, and the battle to keep the dream alive. Richard Rawlings' story didn't start in the limelight. It began in Fort Worth, Texas, where he was born on March 30th, 1969. Long before the world knew his name, he was just a young kid with a passion for cars and a dream that felt bigger than his hometown. From an early age, Richard was obsessed with everything on 4 wheels. His father, a car enthusiast himself, would take him to car shows and classic auctions. Those early memories left a mark on him, and by the age of 14, Richard had already bought his first car, a 1974 Mercury Comet. While most kids his age were focused on school dances or video games, Richard was out in the driveway, getting his hands dirty and learning what made a machine tick. But Rawlings wasn't born into wealth or privilege. Before fame ever found him, he held down some of the toughest jobs imaginable. He worked as a firefighter, a police officer, and a paramedic. Thankless roles that built the resilience he'd need later in life. Each of these jobs taught him something different: how to stay calm in chaos, how to hustle under pressure, and how to keep moving when the odds were stacked against him. But deep down, the call of entrepreneurship and the roar of a car engine never left his heart. In 1999, Richard took his first big leap into the business world by founding Lincoln Press, a printing and advertising company. It wasn't glamorous, but it was his first taste of running a company and making decisions that mattered. The business grew quickly, thanks to Richard's relentless drive and street-smart sense of marketing. But even as Lincoln Press succeeded, his heart was still in the garage. He knew that his true calling was building and restoring classic cars, not printing brochures. So in 2004, he made the bold decision to sell Lincoln Press. With the money he made from the sale, he bet everything on a risky new venture: Gas Monkey Garage. Based in Dallas, Texas, it was more than just a car shop. It was Richard's vision brought to life. He didn't just want to restore cars. He wanted to build a brand that captured the energy, attitude, and grit of classic American car culture. With a mix of marketing genius and mechanical know-how, Gas Monkey Garage quickly became a name people recognized, even before television came knocking. But when the Discovery Channel launched Fast and Loud in 2012, everything changed. Overnight, Richard Rawlings became a household name. The show followed him and his team as they bought, restored, and flipped classic cars at breakneck speed, all while juggling deadlines, budgets, and big personalities. Audiences were hooked, not just on the cars, but on Richard himself. His quick wit, fast-talking charm, and never-slow-down mentality made him a standout in a sea of reality TV stars. For 8 years, Fast and Loud dominated ratings and brought millions of viewers into the world of Gas Monkey Garage. Rawlings went from local gearhead to international celebrity. His brand exploded. Merchandise, restaurants, energy drinks, and live appearances followed. He became the face of modern car culture, someone who could walk the line between gearhead and businessman. His story was the kind people loved. A self-made man who turned his passion into a multi-million-dollar empire, proving that you didn't need a silver spoon to live the American dream. But like any fast ride, the road wasn't without bumps. Behind the scenes, the pressure to maintain that momentum was immense. As the cameras captured the highs, there were lows that never made it to air. Business decisions that didn't pan out, projects that went over budget, and personal sacrifices that came with the spotlight. Still, in this chapter of his life, everything seemed possible. Richard Rawlings had built something out of nothing, and for a moment, it looked like the ride would never end. From firefighter to reality TV mogul, from small-town dreamer to global car icon, his story was just getting started. But as we're about to see, every rise has its fall, and even the strongest engines can sputter when the road gets rough. At the height of his fame, Richard Rawlings seemed untouchable. Gas Monkey was a household name, Fast and Loud was pulling in millions of viewers, and his brand was expanding beyond the garage. But just like in the car world, even the most powerful engines can stall, and when they do, the crash can be loud. In 2014, Rawlings decided to take a bold step outside of cars with a new venture, Gas Monkey Live. It was a massive music venue located in Dallas, meant to be the next big thing in live entertainment. With its edgy branding and Rawlings' name behind it, the venue drew crowds and hosted big acts. For a while, it looked like another winning move, but behind the scenes, the music wasn't as sweet. Operational costs were high, competition in the industry was fierce, and the margin for error was razor thin. After 6 years of concerts, complications, and climbing expenses, Gas Monkey Live shut its doors in 2020. It was a quiet exit for a project that once promised so much. That wasn't the only venture to fall. Richard had also opened a restaurant called Richard Rawlings' Garage in 2016, a place where fans could grab a burger, buy merch, and soak in the Gas Monkey vibe. It was another attempt to turn the brand into a lifestyle. The restaurant, based in Harker Heights, Texas, featured a car-centric theme with flashy decor and a menu aimed at gearheads and families alike. But the food industry isn't forgiving, even for celebrities. Despite the hype, the restaurant struggled to maintain steady business. And by 2019, it too was closed. And then came the biggest blow of all, the end of Fast and Loud. After an 8-year run, the show concluded in 2020. It had brought Richard into the living rooms of millions and turned him into a television icon. But as the seasons went on, the energy that made the show a hit began to wear thin. Viewership declined, creative tensions reportedly grew, and Richard himself later admitted that it was simply time to move on. The cameras stopped rolling, and just like that, one of the most successful car shows in television history came to a close. The show that had launched a brand and helped build an empire was over. These closures didn't just represent failed ventures, they marked the end of a golden era. For Rawlings, it was a harsh reminder that success in one lane doesn't always translate to another. And when the spotlight fades, the real test begins. Behind the scenes, Richard was no stranger to struggle. Despite the outward image of wealth and success, he's been candid about the financial difficulties he's faced. He's gone broke, not once, but twice. There were times when he had to rely on help from family just to stay afloat. The reality of entrepreneurship is far more brutal than what fans saw on TV. He built everything from scratch, took risks most wouldn't dare to, and along the way lost just as much as he gained. Financial setbacks are one thing, but the emotional toll is another. When you've built your entire identity around motion, momentum, and success, slowing down can feel like failure. The end of Fast and Loud, the loss of his restaurant, the closure of the music venue. Each event was a gut punch, a reminder that even the boldest brands can be vulnerable. For a man who had spent years living life in the fast lane, the sudden stillness was deafening. No roaring engines, no film crews, no crowds, just the hard reality of figuring out what comes next. But Richard Rawlings is not the kind of man to go quietly. These setbacks didn't end him. They tested him. They forced him to reflect, reevaluate, and figure out whether the dream he once chased was still worth fighting for. And that's where the real story begins, not in the rise, but in how he handled the fall. Beyond the fast cars, business ventures, and reality TV fame, Richard Rawlings' personal life has been a winding road filled with sharp turns, steep climbs, and emotional detours. While his professional world experienced highs and lows, his personal journey has been equally, if not more, turbulent, marked by multiple marriages, public heartbreak, and brushes with danger that could have changed everything in an instant. Richard's first marriage was in 1993 to Karen K. Grames. It was short-lived, ending just a year later in 1994. At the time, Rawlings was still far from the spotlight, working various jobs and trying to carve out his path. That marriage quietly faded into the rearview mirror, becoming a brief chapter in the larger story of his life. His most well-known relationship, however, was with Suzanne Marie Mergel. The two first tied the knot in 1999, and for a while, it looked like Rawlings had found lasting stability. They spent 10 years together before divorcing in 2009. But in a twist that mirrored the unpredictability of his career, the couple rekindled their relationship and remarried in 2015. Fans saw them together during key moments of his television success, and Suzanne often appeared to be the steady presence in Richard's chaotic, fast-paced world. Yet, despite the second chance, their love story couldn't withstand the pressures of fame, business, and lifestyle. In 2019, they divorced for the second time, this time seemingly for good. Running a business, starring in a TV show, traveling, managing relationships, it's a high-stress environment that doesn't leave much time for rest. While he hasn't spoken publicly about serious health issues beyond the early shooting incident, the signs of burnout have been evident. Slower appearances, more introspective interviews, and a visible shift from constant hustle to more mindful living suggest a man who's learning to balance ambition with self-preservation. For someone who once measured success in horsepower and headlines, these personal setbacks offered a painful but necessary recalibration. These are the things that remind us all, even the boldest personalities, that life can't always be outrun. In the quieter moments away from the camera and the chaos, Richard Rawlings has had to confront the same questions we all do. Who am I without the job? What does love really look like? And how do I keep going when the road keeps throwing obstacles in my way? He's not just a businessman, not just a TV personality. He's a man who's been broken, rebuilt, and battle-tested. His story isn't just about cars, it's about resilience. And through it all, Rawlings keeps driving forward. In the aftermath of empire building and public scrutiny, Richard Rawlings finds himself at a pivotal point, not at the peak of fame, but in the quiet hum of reinvention. No longer the constant face on cable television, but far from forgotten, Rawlings continues to carve out his place in the world of custom cars and beyond. The roar of the fast and loud engines may have quieted, but the man behind the wheel hasn't stopped moving. Today, Richard still operates Gas Monkey Garage, the brand that launched him into the spotlight. Though it no longer carries the momentum of weekly television exposure, the garage remains active, restoring, modifying, and selling classic vehicles with the same signature flair that first captivated fans. It's not just about cars anymore. It's about maintaining a legacy that once defined a movement. The Gas Monkey name still commands recognition, and for Rawlings, it's the lifeblood of his ongoing mission to stay relevant in an ever-changing industry. Merchandise remains a crucial part of that strategy. From t-shirts to hats, the Gas Monkey brand has extended into lifestyle gear, allowing fans to still wear the emblem of rebellion and speed. While the audience may be more niche than before, it's a loyal one, made up of die-hard automotive enthusiasts who followed his journey from local Dallas garages to international fame. Richard has leaned into that niche, understanding that legacy businesses aren't always about expansion, but endurance. More recently, Rawlings has explored sponsorships and racing affiliations that align with his roots. One standout partnership has been with FHO Racing at the Isle of Man TT Races, an iconic event that blends danger, adrenaline, and history, much like Rawlings himself. Supporting racers at one of the world's most challenging and deadly tracks isn't just a sponsorship move, it's a statement. It shows that Rawlings is still plugged into the heart of motorsports culture, even if he's no longer the one behind the wheel or in front of the camera every week. Richard Rawlings' story isn't just about fast cars, big deals, and reality TV. It's about the unpredictable turns life takes when the cameras stop rolling and the crowds thin out. Beyond the showmanship, Rawlings' journey is a revealing case study of the entrepreneurial roller coaster, the kind that lifts you high with one hand and tests your grip with the other. One of the most important takeaways from Richard's career is just how quickly fame can shift gears. One moment, you're on top of the world with millions watching your every move. The next, you're recalculating your route while the spotlight dims. Rawlings lived through that in real time, experiencing both the explosive rise of Fast and Loud and the gradual fade-out that followed. It's a reminder that no amount of charisma or brand power can protect you from the changing tides of media and consumer interest. What kept Rawlings afloat, then and now, was adaptability. He never relied on a single venture to define him. Whether it was custom car flips, merchandise, restaurants, music venues, or television production, Rawlings constantly pivoted. Some moves worked, others didn't. But each one reflected a core entrepreneurial instinct: diversify and stay moving. If one stream dries up, another must be built, fast. That kind of resilience is what separates temporary success from lasting impact. In interviews and reflections, Rawlings has spoken candidly about his financial missteps, admitting to going broke more than once and relying on family to help get back on his feet. He doesn't hide from those failures. Instead, he uses them as lessons, particularly when advising others. One of his consistent messages is this: don't spend like the good times will never end. He encourages entrepreneurs to practice financial prudence, save when you can, reinvest wisely, and never assume success is permanent. That's a hard-earned lesson for someone who once lived life at full throttle, both personally and professionally. The allure of success can be blinding, and Rawlings admits that chasing expansion sometimes got ahead of sound planning. Whether it was a high-profile restaurant or a music venue, not every venture paid off. And yet, those failures didn't define him. They refined him. He learned, regrouped, and shifted course. For anyone looking to build something, whether it's a business, a brand, or a legacy, Rawlings' path offers a map littered with real-world road signs. Take calculated risks, expect detours, and don't be afraid to start over when the plan stalls. It's not about avoiding failure, but learning how to drive through it without crashing completely. And perhaps the most underrated part of his evolution is the mindset shift. Earlier in his career, it was all about scale. How big, how fast, how loud. Now, the focus seems to have shifted inward. There's a deeper awareness of what truly matters: sustainability, personal integrity, and doing work that aligns with who you are when the audience is gone. Rawlings' approach is far from perfect, but that's what makes it valuable. It's raw, real, and rooted in trial by fire. He doesn't pretend to have all the answers. Instead, he offers something more meaningful. Perspective from someone who's lived it. From late nights in the garage to prime time on national TV to rebuilding after setbacks, Richard Rawlings embodies the messy, unpredictable reality of entrepreneurship. His advice? Know your numbers, trust your gut, but don't ignore the data. Build something that matters to you, not just to the market. Surround yourself with people who are better than you in areas where you're weak. And never stop adapting, because the moment you think you've made it is usually the moment you're most at risk. In the end, Rawlings' story isn't just for car fans or reality TV watchers. It's for anyone brave enough to chase a dream, take a hit, and keep moving forward anyway. His life in the fast lane may have slowed, but the lessons he leaves behind are timeless. Fuel for the next generation of doers. She ran the shop, tamed the chaos, and became the face fans didn't see coming. But behind the scenes of Fast and Loud, Christy Brimberry was fighting a battle no one knew about, until it nearly killed her. This is the untold story of how one woman went from background boss to fan favorite, only to vanish from TV without warning. And what we found after? That's the part you weren't supposed to know. Before we dive into the video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Now let's get into the video. Before she ever stood in front of a camera, before she ever answered phones at Gas Monkey Garage or negotiated deals with collectors, Christy Brimberry was already a force. Born and raised in Texas, Christy didn't grow up dreaming of reality TV or fame. She dreamed of stability, independence, and doing things her own way. She learned early on that if you wanted something done right, you had to do it yourself. That mindset would follow her through every chapter of her life. By the time she crossed paths with Richard Rawlings, Christy had already built a strong reputation as a sharp, dependable office manager in the automotive world. Her resume wasn't flashy, but it was real. Years spent navigating the chaos of fast-moving businesses and male-dominated spaces. When Rawlings needed someone to help run the back end of his growing empire, there was no question. Christy was it. She didn't just take the job, she took command. At Gas Monkey Garage, Christy wasn't wrenching on cars, but make no mistake, she was every bit as essential as the mechanics. She managed the phones, the schedules, the vendors, the payroll. She kept the shop running like a machine, even when the cameras weren't rolling. And when Fast and Loud began filming, Christy quickly became more than just a background player. She was the voice of reason in a world built on horsepower and high-octane personalities. Christy brought something the show desperately needed: stability. She was unshakable, quick-witted, and never afraid to go toe-to-toe with anyone in the garage, including Richard himself. Her presence grounded the show. While others argued over parts and deadlines, Christy kept the business alive. She didn't need the spotlight, she earned it. And for fans who watched her navigate the chaos with a smirk and a sharp tongue, she became an unlikely icon. This was Christy Brimberry before the fame, and the world was about to see what she could really do. When Fast and Loud debuted in 2012, it wasn't built to make stars, it was built to sell cars. The show's premise was simple. Follow Richard Rawlings and his team at Gas Monkey Garage as they flipped classic cars for a profit. But something unexpected happened. Amid the roaring engines and fast deals, a different kind of star began to emerge, one with no interest in the spotlight. Her name was Christy Brimberry. With her distinctive voice, no-nonsense attitude, and fearless energy, Christy quickly became a fan favorite. While the show leaned heavily on male mechanics and testosterone-fueled antics, Christy brought something that cut through all the noise: authenticity. She wasn't trying to be funny. She wasn't trying to be cool. She was just doing her job, and doing it better than most. Fans were drawn to her wit and composure. She could wrangle egos, vendors, and chaos all in one breath. She was the rare voice of reason in a show built on tension. Her eye rolls, sharp comebacks, and cool-headed management of day-to-day operations made her relatable, not just to car fans, but to anyone who'd ever kept things afloat, while others took the credit. Christy never needed to yell to be heard. She earned respect by staying consistent, capable, and unshaken by the chaos around her. She quickly evolved from the woman at the front desk to the heartbeat of the garage. Viewers began tuning in for the cars, but staying for her. And the spotlight? It didn't change her. She didn't start dressing for attention or playing to the camera. Christy stayed grounded, even as her social media following exploded. She wasn't chasing fame. Fame came to her, but with every new episode, the pressure grew. And behind the scenes, it was starting to take a toll. As the cameras kept rolling and Fast and Loud rose to become one of Discovery's most watched shows, Christy Brimberry became more than just an office manager. She was the brand's public face, unofficial spokesperson, and the person keeping Gas Monkey from spinning off the rails. But behind the camera, the growing pressure was relentless. Christy was juggling more than the show ever let on. She was a full-time employee, a public figure, and a mother of 6. And while viewers saw the polished final product each week, they didn't see the sleepless nights, the calls at all hours, or the constant balancing act between filming obligations and real-life responsibilities. Fans loved her strength, but few understood the weight of what she was carrying. The show demanded more with each season: tighter schedules, bigger builds, higher stakes. Christy had to coordinate all of it while also being on whenever the cameras turned toward her. There was no script, no second takes, just real stress and real work under the lens of a global audience. Behind the scenes, sources say there were cracks in the foundation, creative clashes, staffing changes, mounting tension between personalities. And in the middle of it all, Christy. She played mediator, negotiator, and sometimes referee, working tirelessly to protect both the business and the people around her. But who was protecting her? The expectations never slowed down. Fans wanted more of her. Producers leaned on her as the dependable voice. Her family needed her at home. And in the rare quiet moments, Christy began to ask herself what the cost of all this really was. Something began to shift. By season 12, fans noticed that Christy was appearing less frequently on screen. Her quick wit and presence still popped up here and there, but something felt different. The woman who once anchored the show now seemed like a guest in her own garage, and people started asking, what's going on with Christy Brimberry? There was no formal announcement, no scandal, just fewer scenes, less camera time, and more mystery. Rumors swirled online. Was she clashing with Richard Rawlings? Were producers sidelining her? Had the show's evolving tone pushed her out of the spotlight? Insiders whispered that the atmosphere behind the scenes was becoming harder to manage. The show had grown into a global brand, and with that came egos, corporate pressures, and a different kind of hustle. One Christie wasn't built for. She was never about fame. She didn't want the drama. She just wanted to work, do it well, and go home. But reality TV doesn't work that way. As storylines became more exaggerated and pressure for entertainment value increased, the authenticity that made Christie beloved was starting to feel out of place. She didn't fake fights. She didn't perform emotions. And that made her less valuable in a format that rewarded chaos. Behind closed doors, Christie was growing tired. The tension between doing what she loved and becoming part of a machine she didn't believe in anymore was wearing her down. Fans may have thought she was stepping back for personal reasons, but the truth was more complex. She was being slowly erased by a system that no longer saw her as essential. And Christie? She was preparing to walk away. In 2016, the woman who had held the Fast and Loud empire together dropped a bombshell. Christie Brimberry revealed that she had been diagnosed with thyroid cancer, a diagnosis that had come fast, aggressive, and terrifying. The cancer had already spread to her lymph nodes by the time doctors found it, and surgery was no longer optional. It was urgent. What followed wasn't just a routine operation. Doctors had to remove her thyroid, multiple lymph nodes, and a section of her trachea. Christie's voice was at risk. Her life was at risk. The tough, sharp-witted woman viewers had come to love was suddenly fighting a silent battle. One that cameras didn't catch, one that scripts didn't write. And for the first time, the woman who held everyone else together had to let go and focus on saving herself. Christie didn't hide it. She posted about the diagnosis online, sharing raw details with her fans. She wasn't looking for sympathy. She was raising awareness. She posted a picture of the scar that ran across her throat, a physical reminder of just how close she'd come to losing everything. And fans rallied around her, flooding her with messages of support. But the recovery wasn't easy. The emotional toll was as heavy as the physical one. Losing your voice when your job is talking, managing, negotiating, it was devastating. And for a mother of 6, the fear of not being around for your kids is the kind of terror that keeps you awake at night. Christie faced it with courage, but she also faced it with questions. Was the stress from work a factor? Had she ignored warning signs because she was too busy keeping others afloat? Her battle with cancer changed everything. It shifted her priorities. Fame suddenly meant nothing. Money didn't matter. What mattered was life, breath, time. And in that clarity, Christie realized she was done sacrificing herself for something that no longer gave back. The woman who had survived cancer wasn't going back to business as usual. She was preparing for something quieter, something hers. Unlike so many reality stars who exit with drama, scandal, or tabloid flair, Christie Brimberry left the world of Fast and Loud with barely a whisper. No on-air farewell. No emotional last episode. Just absence. One day she was there, the next she wasn't. And fans were left wondering, where did Christie go? The truth, she left on her own terms. Behind the scenes, the writing had been on the wall for a while. The show had shifted from a passion project about classic cars into something louder, flashier, and less personal. The chaos became the point, and for someone like Christie, who valued real connection over ratings, that shift was unbearable. Combine that with her cancer recovery, the physical strain, and the emotional toll of survival, and the decision became clear. It was time to walk away. Not out of weakness, but out of strength. Christy didn't need to prove anything anymore. She had survived a life-threatening disease. She had helped build one of the most recognizable automotive brands on television. And now, she had nothing left to prove. What stung for fans wasn't just the absence, it was the silence. Discovery never aired a tribute. The cast never made a public statement. Christy deserved a send-off, and she didn't get one. But maybe that was by design. Maybe, for once, she wanted to leave something behind without having to perform. For years, she carried the weight of the garage, the crew, the show. And now, she was finally free. Free to heal. Free to breathe. Free to be Christy Brimberry. Not the fast-talking fixer from Gas Monkey, but a woman who had survived fire and chosen peace instead. You won't find Christy Brimberry making tabloid headlines. You won't catch her on reunion shows or spilling secrets for clicks. After leaving Fast and Loud, she chose a different path. Quiet, deliberate, and refreshingly grounded. Today, Christy lives a life far removed from the constant grind of reality TV. She still lives in Texas, still raises her kids, and still keeps one foot in the automotive world. But the pace is different now. She's more selective, more present, and more protective of her time. The cancer diagnosis taught her that life doesn't wait, and she's done wasting it on things that don't matter. She occasionally appears at car events, fundraisers, car shows, community meetups. And whenever she does, the fans show up in full force. Because even though she's no longer on TV, the love never left. People respect her, not for what she did on camera, but for how she carried herself off of it. Her social media presence is still active, but it's not about branding or influencing. It's about encouragement. She posts about her family, her health, her journey. She talks about healing, not just from cancer, but from years of burnout, overwork, and stress. She's spoken about self-care, mental health, and the importance of setting boundaries. The tough-as-nails manager has softened, but in all the best ways. There are whispers she's involved in consulting, maybe helping others launch businesses, maybe even quietly supporting female entrepreneurs in male-dominated industries. But she doesn't brag about it. Christy never needed attention to make an impact. After years of being the glue that held a machine together, she finally chose to put herself first. And for once, she doesn't have to answer to anyone but herself. Christy Brimberry always carried herself with class. She didn't stir drama, didn't start feuds, and rarely spoke ill of anyone, even when she had every reason to. But those who paid attention knew there was more to her story than what aired on television. Beneath the surface of Fast and Loud's success, a darker reality simmered. One Christy never fully revealed, but occasionally hinted at. Former staffers and insiders have whispered about the atmosphere behind the scenes, one where egos clashed and respect was not always evenly distributed. Gas Monkey Garage was a high-pressure environment, fueled by tight deadlines, creative demands, and the ever-present pressure to deliver good television. Some say it bordered on toxic. Others outright claimed it crossed the line. While the show portrayed camaraderie and laughs, reality TV has a way of smoothing over tension. Christy, fans believe, was the one holding that chaos together. And yet, she was often overlooked when credit was due. Reports suggest she was underpaid, overworked, and excluded from the financial successes others enjoyed. But she never complained publicly. She kept the show and her integrity intact. There were cryptic social media posts, brief mentions of feeling used, of finding out who your real friends are. She never named names, But those close to her say that the deeper she got into the TV world, the more she began to feel like a prop instead of a partner. People she once trusted may have used her as a stepping stone. And that betrayal, more than the fame or fatigue, cut the deepest. Christy has never done a tell-all. She never sat down for a scandalous interview. But the silence? That speaks volumes. She could have aired it all, but didn't. Instead, she walked away, head held high, leaving behind a storm she survived, but never forgot. When Christy Brimberry left Fast and Loud, she didn't just leave a job or a TV show, she left behind a legacy. And not the kind written in contracts or viewership ratings. Her legacy was written in every woman who felt empowered watching her stand firm in a garage full of men. In every employee who saw how she handled pressure without losing her soul. In every fan who realized strength isn't about shouting. It's about showing up over and over again, no matter what life throws at you. Christy changed the game, not by reinventing it, but by playing it her way. She didn't pretend to be someone she wasn't. She didn't compromise her standards. And she didn't let the fame swallow her. In a world that often rewards noise, Christy's quiet strength stood out. She became the fan favorite without ever chasing attention. But she also left behind questions. Why didn't the show acknowledge her departure? Why wasn't she given the send-off she deserved? Why did someone so central to the show vanish without a single frame to honor her impact? Those unanswered questions linger, and they hurt. Because Christy wasn't just another supporting character. She was the engine that kept the shop moving. And her absence created a void no amount of camera time or cast changes could fill. Yet, despite the lack of closure, Christy moved on with grace. She didn't fight to reclaim her space. She chose peace over pride. And in doing so, she taught one final lesson. Sometimes walking away is the most powerful move you can make, especially when you know your worth and refuse to let anyone define it for you. Now, years after the cameras have stopped rolling and the garage lights have dimmed, Christy Brimberry finds herself on a different kind of road. One without scripts, pressure, or the weight of expectation. A road she built for herself, not for the ratings, but for her healing. She still carries the scars, the one on her neck from cancer, the invisible ones from betrayal, burnout, and silence. But she wears them like armor. Because Christy didn't just survive the reality TV machine, she escaped it with her dignity intact. And not many can say that. She spends more time now with her kids, investing in moments that matter. She still loves cars, but her focus has shifted from horsepower to peace of mind, from managing chaos to creating calm. She's found joy in simplicity, in being present, in being real. And while her time in the spotlight may be over, her influence still lingers. Young women entering the automotive world still mention her name. Fans still follow her journey. And every once in a while, someone walks up to her at an event just to say, "Thank you for being you." Christy Brimberry didn't need a grand finale. Her story isn't over, it's evolving. She's mentoring quietly, building privately, healing fully. And even though the world may have moved on to the next big personality or viral moment, Christy's legacy remains. Because it was never about being loud, it was about being lasting. And in that way, Christy Brimberry will always be remembered as the quiet powerhouse who walked away on her own terms and never looked back. He was the brains behind the builds, the beard behind the brand, and the silent force who made Fast and Loud a global phenomenon. But then, Just as fast as he rose, Aaron Kaufman walked away. No blow-up, no long goodbye, just silence. Why did he leave? Where is he now? And what secrets has he kept buried since stepping out of the spotlight? Before we dive into the video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Now, let's get into the video. Before the beard, the fame, and the show that would make him a household name, Aaron Kaufman was already in motion, fast, focused, and fundamentally different. Born in Crowley, Texas, a small town southwest of Fort Worth, Aaron wasn't the kind of kid who sat still. He was curious, hands-on, obsessive. While other kids were riding bikes, Aaron was disassembling his to figure out how it worked, and then putting it back together, only better. From the beginning, it was clear. This wasn't just a kid who liked tools. This was someone born to build. What made Aaron unique wasn't just his mechanical ability. It was the way he saw machines. To him, a car wasn't just a shell of metal. It was a canvas. Every curve had to flow. Every piece had to serve both form and function. He wasn't content with good enough. He chased precision. Not because someone told him to, but because anything less made him restless. He taught himself everything: engine tuning, fabrication, welding, suspension geometry. While others were watching football or partying, Aaron was in a garage, torch in hand, welding something extraordinary. By his early 20s, his reputation had already started to spread through the Texas car scene. He didn't talk a big game. He didn't have to. His builds spoke for him. Low-slung muscle cars, restored classics, customs with soul. He had a look, a style, a signature. And even before the cameras found him, people were already calling him a prodigy. But despite the talent, Aaron didn't seek the spotlight. Fame held no appeal. He wasn't chasing reality TV, sponsorships, or red carpets. He just wanted to build something great, something real. That purity, rare in any industry, made him stand out even more. And it's what eventually caught the attention of a certain fast-talking entrepreneur from Fort Worth named Richard Rawlings. Their collision course was inevitable, and it would change both of their lives, forever. When Richard Rawlings met Aaron Kaufman, it wasn't a handshake, it was a spark. Rawlings, a former police officer turned entrepreneur, had big ideas and a bigger personality. He needed someone who could bring those ideas to life in the garage, someone who could fabricate from scratch, troubleshoot on instinct, and build with precision under pressure. Aaron Kaufman wasn't just the best choice, he was the only choice. They met at a local Dallas area garage where Aaron was working. Richard brought in a car and left with more than just a service receipt. He walked away knowing he had found the mechanical mind that could bring Gas Monkey Garage to life. Their dynamic was perfect on paper. Richard was the visionary, the deal-maker, the marketer. Aaron was the craftsman, the fabricator, the perfectionist. Together, they were a storm of creativity and ambition. Gas Monkey Garage was founded in 2004 and quickly grew from a gritty Dallas workspace into a nationally known name. And while Richard pushed the brand into the spotlight, Aaron was busy working late nights, bringing impossible builds to reality with a welder in one hand and a wrench in the other. He wasn't interested in branding, he was interested in building. The shop's reputation soared thanks to their chemistry. Two polar opposites somehow working in sync. Richard was always chasing growth, more builds, more exposure, more business. Aaron was chasing perfection, cleaner lines, tighter welds, better engineering. Their goals weren't always aligned. And though they respected each other, They saw the world through very different lenses. Still, the partnership worked until the cameras showed up. And then, everything changed. When Fast and Loud premiered on the Discovery Channel in 2012, the garage wasn't ready for what was about to happen. The show's premise was simple: flip classic cars, make money, and show off the lifestyle of the high-octane gas monkey crew. But what producers didn't expect was that the soft-spoken, heavily bearded mechanic in the background would become a breakout star. Aaron Kaufman didn't ask to be on TV. In fact, he was hesitant about it. He wasn't an actor, didn't care about fame, and hated being the center of attention. But from the very first episode, audiences were drawn to him. He was the antidote to the over-the-top reality TV formula. Quiet, focused, and brutally honest. He didn't hype things up. He didn't pretend to be excited when he wasn't. If a car was a mess, he said so. If a build was rushed, he didn't sugarcoat it. Viewers respected that. While Richard played the role of the showman, flashing smiles, making deals, and cracking jokes, Aaron kept the work real. He was in the shop before the cameras rolled and still working long after they left. The pressure to build on deadline, with sponsors breathing down their necks and editors needing drama, was immense. Aaron bore the brunt of it, and he rarely complained, at least not out loud. But the fame was suffocating. Fans started recognizing him in public. Social media exploded. Suddenly, he wasn't just a mechanic. He was a TV personality. And it wasn't a role he ever wanted. He was proud of his work, but uncomfortable with the attention. The fame never fueled him. It drained him. By season 5, the stress was showing. Aaron's face told the story the show didn't. Fatigue, frustration, and a growing sense that the creative soul of Gas Monkey was slipping away. As Fast and Loud continued to dominate ratings, the cracks between Aaron and the show's format started widening. What began as a raw, garage-based series about craftsmanship had become something else entirely. Faster, flashier, and built for ratings. The builds were getting bigger, but the time frames were getting smaller. And Aaron Kaufman was done cutting corners. He had always taken pride in doing things right. If a custom suspension took 30 hours to fabricate, he put in the time. But now, production wanted it done in 10. Deadlines were no longer set by engineering. They were set by sponsors and air dates. And while viewers saw the finished product, they didn't see what it cost Aaron to get there. Sleepless nights, stress-induced headaches, the kind of burnout that doesn't go away with a weekend off. The growing divide between Richard and Aaron became harder to ignore. Richard, always the businessman, was thinking expansion. Aaron was still thinking about bolt patterns, weld quality, and the perfect geometry on a chassis. They were growing the same brand, but in opposite directions. The tension wasn't just creative, it was personal. Aaron started shutting down, saying less on camera, avoiding the spotlight. The joy he once found in fabrication was being replaced with resentment. To many in the shop, Aaron had become distant, harder to reach. Not angry, just exhausted. By season 12, the silent tension had become a roar behind the scenes. Everyone could feel it. The bearded genius who once made the impossible look easy was starting to fade. And while Richard smiled for the cameras, Aaron was quietly planning his exit. It happened fast. One day, Aaron Kaufman was the face of Fast and Loud. The builder fans trusted, the craftsman audiences respected. Then, suddenly, he was gone. In early 2017, viewers were stunned when Aaron announced his departure from the show mid-season. No tearful goodbye, no explosive finale. Just a simple explanation: creative differences. But the truth was far more complicated and far more personal. For Aaron, the decision to leave wasn't impulsive. It had been building for years, layer by layer, like rust beneath a shiny paint job. The show's direction had drifted from its roots. The garage, once a sacred space for creativity and precision, had become a stage. And Aaron? He was tired of performing. He had always been uncomfortable with fame. While Richard thrived in the spotlight, Aaron found it exhausting, invasive, even suffocating. But it wasn't just the cameras. It was what the cameras demanded: speed over substance, drama over discipline, spectacle over skill. And Aaron, ever the perfectionist, couldn't stomach that any longer. There were also unspoken tensions behind the scenes. Sources close to the crew said the relationship between Aaron and Richard had cooled significantly. Respect was still there, but trust? Not so much. Aaron had grown weary of decisions being made for the brand rather than the build. Deals were struck without his input. Deadlines were imposed without discussion. The shop no longer felt like a partnership. It felt like a machine, and Aaron was a cog that didn't fit anymore. So he did what few people in his position would dare to do. He walked away. He left the fame, the money, the fans, and the global platform. Because for Aaron Kaufman, peace of mind mattered more than 1 million viewers. And while fans were left wondering why, Aaron was already looking forward to something he could build on his own terms. When Aaron left Fast and Loud, he didn't retreat, he rebuilt. In true Kaufman fashion, he didn't launch a flashy brand with celebrity endorsements. He opened a modest but focused custom shop in Dallas, ArcLight Fabrication. It wasn't about expansion, it was about control. Specializing in aftermarket parts for Ford F-100s, ArcLight became a reflection of Aaron himself: niche, detail-oriented, and quietly brilliant. He brought in a small, hand-picked team. No egos, no producers, just fabricators who shared his passion for quality and authenticity. Every bolt mattered. Every weld told a story. For the first time in years, Aaron was free to work at his own pace, without cameras or deadlines dictating the rhythm. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. Shortly after founding ArcLight, Discovery offered him his own show, Shifting Gears with Aaron Kaufman. The concept? Follow Aaron as he pursued ambitious new builds, managed a small team, and tried to rediscover what made him fall in love with cars in the first place. The show premiered in 2018, and while it had the builds fans loved, it didn't have the fireworks or flamboyance of Fast and Loud. And maybe that was the point. Shifting Gears lasted just 2 seasons before disappearing quietly. Ratings were decent, but Aaron had no desire to turn it into another high-stakes reality circus. His focus remained on the work. And while ArcLight never exploded into a mega brand, it thrived in its own way, serving serious collectors, focused clients, and those who understood that true craftsmanship isn't made for television. But the question still lingered: was Aaron truly free, or just hiding? Fame is a strange fuel. For some, it ignites ambition. For others, it slowly corrodes the soul. For Aaron Kaufman, it was the latter. Behind the beard and the brilliant builds was a man who never wanted the attention that came with television. And once the spotlight found him, it never left. In the aftermath of Fast and Loud, Aaron tried to stay connected to his fans, but it was clear something had changed. He was more withdrawn, more guarded. Friends and former colleagues noticed a shift in his demeanor. Where once he was intense but approachable, he now seemed distant, even suspicious. Not bitter, but bruised. Whispers began to surface. unconfirmed rumors of fractured friendships, business deals gone sour, and personal struggles he never shared publicly. Aaron never lashed out or named names, but in interviews, he spoke cryptically about losing people, trust issues, and feeling used. He wasn't just burned out, he was disillusioned. The fame he never asked for had taken its toll. Strangers felt entitled to his time. Opportunists tried to ride his name. And inside his own shop, he struggled to balance his high standards with the realities of running a business. He wasn't chasing money, but others around him were, and that tension wore him down. Social media didn't help. Every post became a battleground. Fans asking why he left, critics accusing him of arrogance, others demanding answers he wasn't ready to give. He began posting less, saying less, disappearing into the one place that still made sense: his garage. Fame had built him up, but it had also pushed him into the shadows. When the cameras shut off, they left a silence Aaron didn't quite know how to fill. He began retreating from social media, posting less and less. When he did speak, it was often vague. Quotes about mental exhaustion, about finding clarity in isolation, about being disappointed by those he once trusted. These weren't marketing messages. They were confessions, dropped quietly into the digital void. Fans noticed. "Is Aaron okay?" became a common question on forums. "He looks tired," some said. "He doesn't seem like himself." And maybe he wasn't. Maybe Aaron Kaufman, the mythic builder with the stoic face and razor-sharp mind, had reached the emotional edge and was learning, painfully, how to step back from it. Aaron Kaufman didn't disappear. He just changed lanes. These days, he's still building, but on his terms. ArcLight fabrication remains operational, but it's no longer promoted as the next big brand. There are no YouTube series, no reality show trailers, no press tours. Aaron works when he wants to, on projects he believes in. The shop has scaled down, evolved, and focused in. And that's exactly how he wants it. He's been spotted at select car events, but always under the radar. He'll talk to fans, briefly, graciously, but don't expect long interviews or dramatic reveals. Aaron keeps his circle tight. He values loyalty now more than ever, and the people in his life are there because they understand what he's been through and what he's protecting. He's no longer trying to prove anything. He's not chasing growth, attention, or television deals. The fast-paced world of network builds and staged drama is behind him. In its place is something slower, more deliberate, more personal. He's rediscovered what he loved about cars in the first place: the craft, the solitude, the challenge. And in doing so, he's redefined what success means for someone like him. To the world, it might look like Aaron Kaufman faded away. But to those who understand what he was up against, it's clear. He didn't vanish. He healed. Quietly. Methodically. Just like everything else he's ever done. Aaron Kaufman didn't write a tell-all book. He didn't post a dramatic farewell or burn bridges on his way out. He simply left. And in a culture obsessed with oversharing, that silence made people uncomfortable. But in that silence lies his most powerful message. He could have capitalized on his fame, launched a massive brand, gone the influencer route, monetized his every move. But Aaron never wanted to be a product. He wanted to be a builder. And when the spotlight started distorting his purpose, he did the one thing most stars never do. He walked away from it all. His legacy isn't measured by TV ratings or Instagram likes. It's measured by respect, the kind of respect that comes from doing things right when no one's watching. from refusing to compromise, even when the money is good, from protecting your soul, even when it costs you everything else. He's inspired a generation of builders, not just to pick up a torch, but to know when to put it down, to work hard, stay honest, and remember that the loudest voice isn't always the truest one. Aaron Kaufman may never return to reality TV. He may never explain the full truth behind his departure. And that's fine, because what he left behind is more important than what he walked away from. In the end, Aaron Kaufman's story isn't about an exit. It's about escape from the noise, from the pressure, from a system that couldn't see the value in slowing down. And in that escape,
Look, Mom, no hands.
she was the only one who could talk back to Richard Rawlings and get away with it. But behind the sassy comebacks and flawless upholstery was a woman with a past most viewers never heard about. This is the untold story of Sue Martin, Fast and Loud's no-nonsense queen of custom interiors, and the secrets she's kept stitched tight until now. Before we dive into the video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Now let's get into the video. Before she ever raised her voice at Richard Rawlings or stitched her name into Fast and Loud history, Sue Martin was a survivor. Born in Vietnam during a time of war and political unrest, Sue's early life was shaped by uncertainty, hardship, and the instinct to keep moving forward. When she immigrated to the United States in the late 1970s, she didn't come for fame. She came for a chance, a new start, a life where she could build something of her own from the ground up. She landed in Texas with no money, limited English, and no connections. But what she did have was relentless determination. She took on any work she could, factory jobs, cleaning, anything that would pay the bills. She wasn't afraid of long hours or getting her hands dirty. That mindset would define her for the rest of her life. Eventually, she found herself drawn to the world of upholstery. Maybe it was the artistry. Maybe it was the precision. Maybe it was the peace she found in turning something broken into something beautiful. Whatever it was, Sue had found her craft. By the late 1980s, she had opened her own shop, OSM Auto Upholstery, right in the heart of Dallas. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't famous, but it was hers. A small corner of the world where she called the shots, set the standards, and demanded the best from herself and everyone around her. She had built it from scratch, just like her life. Every seat she reupholstered, every stitch she sewed, it was all done with pride, pressure, and purpose. What most people don't realize is that Sue didn't just learn a trade. She built a sanctuary, a place where she wasn't judged for her accent or background, a place where her work could speak for her. She didn't talk about her struggles. She didn't share sob stories. But those close to her say the shop wasn't just a business. It was her armor. She may have arrived in America with nothing, but she turned that nothing into a legacy, and the world was about to notice. When Sue Martin opened ASM Auto Upholstery, she didn't hang a flashy sign or buy billboard space. She didn't need to. Word traveled fast. There was a woman in Dallas doing interiors cleaner, tighter, and more flawless than anyone else. And she didn't play games. From the beginning, Sue ran her shop like a general. Deadlines weren't suggestions, mistakes weren't tolerated, and respect? It was earned, never assumed. She wasn't trying to build an empire. She was just doing what she did best, creating perfection, one stitch at a time. Whether it was a classic Mustang, a rare Porsche, or a ratty old pickup, Sue treated each job like it was headed to a world-class car show. Her materials were top-notch, Her craftsmanship was unmatched, and her expectations? Brutal. But that's what made her different. You didn't walk into ASM for a discount job. You walked in because you wanted it done right. Her clients included classic car owners, collectors, racers, even a few celebrities. But Sue didn't care who you were. If your car wasn't clean, your measurements weren't precise, or your attitude wasn't right, she'd let you have it. No filter, no hesitation. She could dismantle a car seat with one hand and your ego with the other. That edge, that unflinching attitude, would become her trademark. Long before reality TV came calling, Sue had already become a legend in the Dallas automotive world. Her name carried weight. Her shop was her kingdom. And while others crumbled under the pressure of running a small business, Sue turned hers into a standard of excellence. What no one expected was that her empire, built quietly, stitch by stitch, was about to become the backdrop for one of the most unlikely TV crossovers in automotive history. Enter Richard Rawlings, the fast-talking face of Fast and Loud. When Gas Monkey Garage needed custom interiors, there was only one place they trusted: ASM Upholstery. And there was only one woman they feared. From the moment Richard walked into Sue's shop, the dynamic was electric. He brought ego, swagger, and a camera crew. She met him with a raised eyebrow and a devastating one-liner. And thus, one of the show's most iconic duos was born. Sue wasn't cast. She wasn't coached. She wasn't handed a script. She was just herself, sharp, blunt, and hilariously unimpressed. As Gas Monkey's cars rolled in for interior work, the crew quickly learned what viewers would come to love. You didn't mess with Sue. Her comebacks were fast. Her standards were faster. While other characters on the show leaned into exaggerated personalities, Sue didn't have to act. She didn't care about camera angles or producer notes. If a job was sloppy, she'd call it out. If Richard tried to rush her, she'd tell him to get lost. She was the only person on Fast and Loud who could talk to Rawlings like an underpaid intern and get away with it. Viewers were hooked. The chemistry between Richard and Sue became a fan favorite. Less a partnership, more a battle of wills. And Sue never blinked. She didn't need to play the game because she was the game. People weren't tuning in just for the cars anymore. They wanted to see what Sue would say next. And that's what made her dangerous. She wasn't trying to be famous. She was just trying to get the job done, which made her the most authentic and unpredictable person on the show. While most reality shows rely on personalities crafted in the editing room, Sue Martin didn't need editing. She came fully formed. Tough, smart, and unfiltered, she refused to play the role of the comedic sidekick or the token female presence. She was the boss, on camera and off, and she made sure everyone knew it. Running a successful business while juggling TV appearances is no easy task. But Sue made it look effortless because her focus never wavered. While Richard and the crew joked around, she was measuring seat angles, stitching panels, and delivering pristine interiors under pressure. Her shop didn't stop just because a camera showed up. If anything, she made it clear the cameras were the ones who had to adapt to her world, not the other way around. Behind the sass and sarcasm was a businesswoman who had spent decades building her credibility in a male-dominated industry. And she wasn't about to let reality TV turn her into a caricature. She was real. And that's exactly why fans loved her. But that toughness didn't come without a cost. Her high standards meant high turnover. Some employees couldn't keep up. Others clashed with her direct style. Rumors swirled of tense staff meetings, dramatic exits, and strict rules inside the shop. But Sue never apologized for being demanding. She believed in her work. She expected the same from everyone else. While others in the Fast and Loud orbit came and went, Sue remained the one constant, fiercely independent and utterly irreplaceable. She didn't need to shout to prove her worth, but when she did raise her voice, everyone listened. Because when Sue Martin spoke, it meant something. Sue Martin never needed the spotlight, but when it was gone, fans noticed. By the time Fast and Loud hit its 14th season, the woman who once dominated scenes with a single side-eye or deadpan jab had all but disappeared. No farewell episode, no official statement. One day she was there, holding her own in the Gas Monkey Circus. The next, gone. Like a ghost stitched into the show's fabric and suddenly unthreaded. The internet took notice. Fans filled forums and Reddit threads with questions. Where's Sue? Why isn't she on the show anymore? Speculation exploded. Some said it was a creative decision. Others believed it was personal. But among the most popular theories? A falling out with Richard Rawlings. Insiders whispered about tension behind the scenes, arguments over deadlines, money, respect. Sue was known for her unwavering standards and zero tolerance for nonsense. As the show evolved into a bigger brand, packed with sponsors, tighter timelines, and corporate influence, those values may have clashed hard with the new direction. Rumors of a final blow-up between Sue and production were never confirmed, but the silence from both sides spoke volumes. Even longtime crew members refused to speak on the record. No one wanted to cross Sue. She wasn't just feared, she was respected. And in her absence, something felt different. The show lost its bite. That unpredictable edge. The one person who could call Richard out without flinching was gone. And no one, not even the most die-hard fans, ever got a proper goodbye. It was the kind of exit only someone like Sue Martin could pull off. Quiet, final, and completely on her terms. Sue may have stepped out of the limelight, but she never stepped away from the work. ASM Auto Upholstery is still standing in Dallas. Doors open, machines humming, leather being stitched with the same ruthless precision she built her name on. But one thing has changed. Sue herself. She's gone dark publicly. No interviews. No social media presence beyond the occasional vague update. No press releases. It's as if she flipped a switch the moment the cameras stopped rolling and retreated fully into her world. Not out of fear, not out of shame, but by choice. And yet, her legend lives on. Ask anyone in the custom car community, and they'll tell you, Sue's still the best. Her interiors still win awards. Her builds still get talked about. The only difference? You just won't hear it from her. She doesn't show up at industry events. She doesn't do autograph sessions. She doesn't play the part. There are whispers she's taken on a mentorship role, guiding younger upholsterers, especially women trying to break into the field. But she keeps it quiet, private, just like everything else about her post-TV life. To those who've met her since the show, the message is clear. Sue isn't interested in reliving her Fast and Loud days. She's busy living on her own terms. And in a world where everyone's chasing clout, Sue Martin remains a mystery, unbothered, unmatched, and uninterested in being anything but herself. To the public, Sue Martin was fearless. But to those who worked behind her shop doors, that fearlessness sometimes crossed the line. Former ASM employees have painted a divided portrait of the Queen of Upholstery, equal parts empowering and intimidating. Some describe her as the best boss they ever had, focused, fiercely loyal, and uncompromising in her standards. Others, however, say the environment inside ASM could be punishing, even toxic. Stories circulate of employees walking out mid-job, shouting matches in the back office, and Sue's infamous temper flaring when a seam wasn't perfect or a deadline was missed. Her expectations were sky-high. Her tolerance for error was non-existent. And while some thrived in that environment, others cracked under the pressure. One former staffer anonymously claimed, "You never knew which Sue you were going to get. She could be hilarious one minute and completely rip you apart the next." Another said, "She didn't care about your excuses. She cared about the work." Lawsuits have been rumored, employment disputes, wrongful termination claims, but none confirmed publicly. Like everything else around Sue, the facts blur into speculation. Was she too harsh? Sue Martin didn't just survive in a male-dominated world. She ruled in it, but she didn't get there by playing nice. Her sarcasm, her sharp tongue, her unapologetic confidence, it was more than personality. It was protection. The automotive industry wasn't built for someone like her, a Vietnamese immigrant, a woman, an outsider. From the moment she opened her doors, she knew respect wouldn't be handed to her. She had to earn it, or take it. The jokes? They were her armor. The verbal smackdowns? Her defense? Because when you're a woman in a space where you're constantly underestimated, being loud isn't just a choice, it's survival. Sue didn't have the luxury of diplomacy. If she was soft, she'd be dismissed. If she was emotional, she'd be labeled weak. So she hardened. And that edge became her identity. People laughed when she ripped into Richard Rawlings. They cheered when she shut down the Gas Monkey crew. But few realized that the woman they saw on screen was, in many ways, a wall. A barrier built brick by brick over decades of proving herself in a world that wasn't always welcoming. She rarely, if ever, spoke about her experience as an immigrant. She never opened up about cultural barriers or gender bias. But you could see it in her work ethic, in the way she ran her shop, in the silence she kept around her personal life. Sue Martin was shaped by struggle, and she wore that history not as a burden, but as a badge. Because for Sue, vulnerability wasn't safe. Precision was, power was, control was. And when the world gave her none of those things, she built them herself, one stitch at a time. The loudest voice on Fast and Loud may have belonged to Sue Martin, but her private life? Completely silent. Fans know the attitude, the banter, the leather work, but they don't know where she lives, who she loves, or what she dreams about. Sue has always kept her personal life locked down, sealed tight behind the same steel-clad privacy that made her shop feel impenetrable. And in that silence, questions began to grow. Does she have a family? Children? A partner? There's no trace. No mentions on air. No interviews. No online breadcrumbs. It's as if Sue stepped out of the show and back into a shadow no one could follow. Then came the rumors. Some claimed she left the show due to health concerns. Others suggested financial troubles behind the scenes, tax issues, debt, or the pressure of running a high-end shop in a cutthroat market. A few even whispered about immigration trauma, that Sue may have survived something darker during her early years in Vietnam that she's never spoken about. More controversially, some speculated about run-ins with difficult clients, jobs gone wrong, money not paid, temper flare-ups that escalated beyond the usual. Again, nothing confirmed. No police reports, no lawsuits made public. But the silence has only fueled the fire. Sue has never addressed any of it. Not once. Not in interviews, not on social media, not even in passing. And that's what makes it more compelling. The woman who never held her tongue on camera, has held everything else back with ironclad discipline. Which begs the question, is Sue protecting her peace or hiding her past? Sue Martin didn't ask to be remembered. She never crafted a personal brand, never campaigned for followers, never cared about her image. She just did the work, and did it better than almost anyone. That alone cemented her place in reality TV history. She wasn't a builder, she wasn't a flipper, but she was the soul of Fast and Loud, the only person who could keep Richard Rawlings humble, and the only cast member who never broke character, because she wasn't playing one. Today, her influence remains, even in silence. Young women entering the automotive world still name-drop Sue as an inspiration. Her shop, ASM Upholstery, is spoken about with the kind of reverence normally reserved for legends. Her builds are still featured at car shows, still talked about in restoration circles, still used as benchmarks for interior perfection. She didn't fade away. She walked away. And there's power in that, in choosing to disappear rather than dilute what made her great. But the secrets? They linger. Why did she vanish from the show without a goodbye? What truths sit behind the whispers of lawsuits and silence? What happened to the woman who once stole every scene with a single look? We may never know, because Sue Martin isn't interested in explaining herself. She never was. And maybe that's why we still talk about her. She was fast, she was loud, and now, in her absence, she's louder than ever. At first, it didn't feel like anything was wrong. Just another episode of Fast and Loud. The cars were loud, the shop was chaotic, and Richard Rawlings was doing what he did best, flipping rides and flipping attitudes. But something was missing, or rather, someone. For the fans who paid attention to the details, it didn't take long to notice that the man behind Gas Monkey's most jaw-dropping paint jobs had suddenly vanished from the screen. Casey Mathieu, the quiet perfectionist with a spray gun and a steady hand, was nowhere to be found. No grand send-off, no final build, no explanation, just gone. It wasn't just jarring, it was suspicious. In a world where TV personalities announce every meal and milestone, Casey's absence was deafening. Viewers were left confused. Was it burnout? A behind-the-scenes feud? Had he been pushed out? Or had he chosen to walk away from fame on his own terms? To understand the mystery, you have to know who KC really was, because he was never like the others. While the cameras chased chaos and drama, KC kept his head down, focused on the work. He wasn't there to be a celebrity. He was there to build, to spray, to perfect. And in doing so, he earned the respect of fans who didn't care about shouting matches or beer runs. They cared about the car. His paint jobs weren't just shiny, they were flawless. The kind of work that made muscle cars look like glass sculptures. The kind of work that doesn't happen by accident or under pressure. And that's where the tension started. Because Fast and Loud thrived on urgency, on fast flips, impossible deadlines, and spectacle over subtlety. Casey didn't. And in the end, that difference wasn't just creative, it was personal. The more successful the show became, the more Casey started to disappear. But was it really that simple? Or was there something deeper behind the man who stepped away from the spotlight without ever saying a word? Before he was a familiar face on Discovery Channel, Casey Mathieu was already something of a legend in the Texas custom car scene, a small-town craftsman with an eye for detail and a passion for perfect paint. He wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing flawless finishes. When Casey joined Gas Monkey Garage, it was never about TV. It was about paint. and he treated it like a calling. His reputation wasn't built on being the loudest guy in the room, but the most focused. While others argued over parts and profits, KC was in the paint booth, masked up, sleeves rolled, quietly creating some of the most beautiful finishes ever seen on Fast and Loud. From vintage Mustangs to custom Chevelle, KC's work didn't just stand out, it defined the build. He made raw metal look like liquid. And fans noticed, even among the chaos of Gas Monkey's fast-paced, entertainment-first production model, KC stood out as the one who was there to do the job right. But as the show's popularity exploded, something started to shift. The builds got flashier, the timelines got shorter, and the show that had started as a real garage with real stakes was starting to feel more like a TV machine, and less like a place for artists. KC tried to keep his head down, to stay focused on the work. But it wasn't long before the strain between what made good TV and what made good craftsmanship began to wear on him. He was the guy who never raised his voice. But he didn't have to. His silence was its own kind of rebellion. And that quiet resistance, it didn't go unnoticed. Behind the scenes, Fast and Loud was evolving, and not always for the better. As Discovery poured more money into the show, expectations skyrocketed. Viewers wanted faster builds, producers wanted more drama, Richard Rawlings wanted to grow the brand. But for KC, what mattered most was the car, not the clock, and definitely not the camera. Multiple sources close to the production suggest that as the show scaled up, deadlines became brutal. Paint jobs that should have taken a week were now being jammed into 24 to 48-hour windows, all for the sake of keeping an episode's momentum high. But Paint doesn't care about storyboards, and neither did KC. He began pushing back. Not with ego, not with attitude, but with standards. He wanted more time, more control, the ability to say no when something wasn't ready. That didn't sit well with producers, or with Richard, who was juggling the demands of the show, the garage, and the Gas Monkey brand empire. To them, speed was king. To KC, quality was non-negotiable. The tension didn't explode, it simmered. Quiet conversations turned into disagreements. Requests turned into conflict. KC didn't want a bigger role. He wanted a better process. And that made him, in the eyes of the production team, a complication. He wasn't chasing screen time. He was chasing perfection. But in reality, TV, perfection is often the first thing to go. Then came 2015. No episode teased it. No storyline built toward it. But suddenly, KC Mathieu was gone. No final scene, no emotional goodbye, just a Facebook post, low-key and to the point. It's been an awesome ride, and I'm grateful. But it's time to put my focus on my family, my shop, and my own goals. He didn't thank the network. He didn't mention Richard. He didn't link to any upcoming projects. He just left. To casual fans, it seemed like just another cast shakeup. But to those paying attention, it was a statement. A quiet middle finger to the entire machine. KC wasn't running away from fame. He was walking toward freedom. Later interviews revealed more. He'd grown tired of the rushed job mentality. He was over having to sacrifice quality to meet the needs of a shooting schedule. He was done with the creative compromise that reality TV demands. And most of all, he missed real work. The kind you don't film. The kind that happens when the cameras are off, the lights are down, and the only thing that matters is how that coat lays down on bare metal. KC didn't quit the garage. He quit the game. And in doing so, he left one of reality TV's biggest shows, not with a bang, but with something far rarer: integrity. When Casey Mathieu left Fast and Loud, many assumed he'd vanish into the shadows, another reality TV name forgotten in the churn. But Casey had other plans. He returned to his roots, to Burleson, Texas. There, in a quiet corner of town, he transformed a modest shop into something that reflected his true values: KC's Paint Shop. This wasn't a media stunt. It wasn't about launching a flashy brand. It was about reclaiming the soul of his work. Every car, every line, every finish, done the right way, on his terms. KC's Paint Shop became more than just a business. It became a statement. No cameras, no scripts, just paint and passion. And customers noticed. Classic car owners, hot rod fans, and local gearheads began bringing their dream builds to KC, not because he was a TV star, but because he was the real deal. A man who valued time over tempo, craft over clout. He didn't just paint cars, he restored pride. Social media became KC's new platform. Live streams, behind-the-scenes photos, deep dive videos explaining the nuances of custom finishes. KC invited fans into his world, not for entertainment, but for education. And the best part? No editing, no deadlines, no yelling. KC didn't leave television to run from the pressure. He left it to return to the purity of creation. And that decision became the cornerstone of everything that followed. While the Fast and Loud audience moved on to new seasons, new builds, and new drama, a loyal faction of fans never stopped wondering, where's KC? Why didn't he get a goodbye? And more importantly, how can we support him now? It turns out, KC didn't need a network. He had something more powerful: trust. Fan forums lit up with discussions about his departure. YouTube commenters called him the only real one. Facebook groups praised his integrity. And whenever KC dropped a new project online, the response was overwhelming. Shares, comments, and heartfelt messages from viewers who had followed his journey since day one. They didn't care that he wasn't on TV anymore. In fact, they respected him more because of it. When he spoke about the importance of doing things right, fans listened. When he opened up about burnout and the emotional toll of reality television, they empathized. Because KC wasn't trying to go viral, he was trying to be honest. He became a voice for the builders who didn't want to play the fame game, for the artists who cared more about their welds than their follower counts. KC didn't fade. He evolved and took his audience with him. KC Mathieu didn't storm out of Fast and Loud. He didn't launch a media war. He didn't trash his former co-workers or play the victim. Instead, he did something much harder. He walked away quietly and rebuilt his career in private. And in that silence, he found something that most reality stars never do: peace. Today, KC's name doesn't trend on Twitter. He doesn't headline conventions or release merch drops every other week. But if you visit Burleson and ask around, you'll hear the same thing over and over. He's the best in the business. His shop has become a haven for dreamers, people who want their cars treated like canvas, not content. And KC, the once silent star of Fast and Loud, is more vocal than ever about what matters: mental health, creative autonomy, and pride in your work. He never chased celebrity. He chased craft. And in an industry fueled by flash, that makes him not just rare, but revolutionary. In a garage world full of noise, KC's greatest strength is still his quiet defiance. And his story isn't a cautionary tale. It's a blueprint. Casey Mathieu didn't leave Fast and Loud with fanfare, but he left a footprint. To the casual viewer, he may have been the paint guy, but to car builders and longtime fans, Casey represented something deeper: purity in a world addicted to spectacle. He was the counterbalance to the chaos, the man who reminded everyone what the show was supposed to be about: cars, craftsmanship, and quiet excellence. Even after his departure, his influence was felt. Builders who worked with him went on to adopt his standards. Fans who watched him work, methodically, patiently, passionately, were inspired to pick up their own paint guns, their own spray masks, their own commitment to detail. And younger viewers? They didn't just see another TV personality. They saw someone they could relate to, someone who didn't need to shout to be heard. Casey's style became a benchmark in custom finishing circles. Painters began referencing his work when discussing technique. Online communities created threads dedicated to breaking down his gloss levels, his prep steps, even his color layering philosophy. He didn't teach through tutorials, he taught by example. And that example spread far beyond Texas. From high school auto shops to elite garages, Casey's name became synonymous with doing it right, even when no one's watching. Casey's quiet exit wasn't just personal, it was prophetic. His departure cracked open a conversation the industry didn't want to have. What does reality TV do to real craftsmanship? Behind the laughter, the build reveals, and the drama that fuels ratings, there's often a hidden cost: burnout, rushed work, artistic compromise, and broken relationships. Casey's decision to leave wasn't dramatic, but it was a warning shot. He left not because he couldn't keep up, but because he didn't want to keep compromising. And in doing so, he exposed a quiet truth about the reality car world. Sometimes, the builders who stay silent are the ones suffering the most. And when Casey stepped away, it signaled something important to both fans and fellow builders. It's okay to say no. You don't have to stay in the machine. You don't have to sell your name for screen time. And you don't have to be loud to make an impact. Casey's story started with paint, but it's ending with something much louder. A legacy that challenges the way we value creators in the age of content. Because the real story wasn't about why he left, it was about why more people should follow his lead. In a world obsessed with growth, exposure, and followers, Casey Mathieu's greatest flex was walking away. No contracts, no spin-offs, no reboots, just conviction. He didn't burn bridges, he outgrew them. He didn't slam doors, he simply stepped through a new one. And now, in a small shop in Burleson, Texas, he's doing exactly what he always wanted to do: build beautiful things on his own terms. There's a lesson in that, not just for fans of Fast and Loud or for car enthusiasts, but for anyone who's ever felt the pull between fame and fulfillment. Casey showed that you can have skill, passion, and integrity, and you don't have to sacrifice one to succeed with the others. He didn't take the easy road, he took the right one. And in doing so, he became more than a painter. He became a blueprint for anyone tired of pretending that louder always means better. Casey didn't just leave a show, he built something stronger than a brand. In a world full of noise, Casey Mathieu let the work speak for itself. He was loud, wild, and unforgettable. The comic relief with a wrench, and the heart of Fast and Loud. Tom Smith wasn't just another mechanic. He brought chaos, charm, and comedy to Gas Monkey Garage. Fans loved him for his unfiltered energy and genuine passion. But one day, he was gone. No goodbye, no explanation, just silence. What happened? Why did the most entertaining man on the show vanish without warning? The truth behind Tom's sudden disappearance has remained buried for years, hidden behind NDAs, corporate politics, and a possible falling out with Richard Rawlings himself. And what followed was even stranger. A failed spin-off, fading appearances, and a quiet retreat from the spotlight. But now, enough pieces have surfaced to finally pull back the curtain. This isn't just a story about a TV firing, it's a deeper, darker tale of fame, fallout, and the moment Fast and Loud lost its soul. What really happened to Tom Smith? Let's find out. Before the cameras rolled, before the memes, and before the mystery of his disappearance, Tom Smith was already a character larger than life. A former U.S. Marine and self-taught mechanic, Tom wasn't your typical TV personality. He wasn't polished, scripted, or reserved. He was wild, loud, unapologetic, and real. When he first showed up on Fast and Loud, viewers were immediately drawn to him, not because he was flashy, but because he was fun. He brought a rare kind of energy to the shop that didn't feel forced or manufactured. It felt lived in. Tom's early scenes on Fast and Loud showed a man who could joke around 1 minute and turn a wrench with serious skill the next. He wasn't pretending to be a mechanic for television. He was a mechanic, and a damn good one. But more than that, Tom brought personality to the show. In an environment that often teetered between egos and deadlines, Tom's chaotic humor broke the tension. Whether he was pulling pranks, blurting out one-liners, or just being off the wall, he made Gas Monkey Garage feel more human. Paired with his good friend Jordan Butler, Tom became part of a dynamic duo that fans instantly loved. The chemistry between the two was undeniable. Classic blue-collar mechanics who weren't afraid to goof off while getting the job done. For a show like Fast and Loud, which could sometimes feel dominated by Richard Rawlings' over-the-top persona, Tom was a grounding force. He wasn't trying to steal the spotlight, he was the spotlight, without even trying. Tom wasn't an actor or a celebrity. He was the kind of guy you could imagine working in a real garage down the street. And that's exactly what made him special. His authenticity broke through the television screen. Fans related to him. They laughed with him. And, eventually, they would miss him more than they expected. Because when Tom disappeared, something went missing from the show, too. Something real. While Richard Rawlings was the face of Fast and Loud, and Aaron Kaufman its mechanical mastermind, Tom Smith was the spark, chaotic, comedic, and completely unforgettable. He wasn't hired for fame or finesse. He was brought in to wrench, joke, and bring levity to the sometimes grueling reality of custom car building. But almost immediately, something happened that no one predicted. Tom began stealing the show. Audiences gravitated toward his slapstick antics and unpredictable behavior, but there was more to it than laughs. Tom gave the show its humanity. While others focused on deadlines and drama, Tom gave viewers something they rarely saw on reality TV: unscripted joy. Whether it was taping co-workers to chairs, launching outrageous rants mid-build, or simply misplacing parts in the most ridiculous way possible, he made Fast and Loud fun. But his comedic energy didn't come at the cost of skill. Tom knew his way around a car. He could diagnose, repair, and fabricate with the best of them. It's easy to forget that beneath the wild hair and louder-than-life personality was a serious mechanic with decades of experience. His knowledge gave his jokes weight and made him more than just a sideshow. Behind the scenes, fans sensed that Tom brought balance to Gas Monkey Garage. He diffused Richard's ego. He brought Jordan Butler's dry wit to life. And most importantly, he gave viewers someone to root for. An everyman who made the madness feel like a place you'd actually want to work. Tom quickly became more than comic relief. He became essential to the chemistry of the show. But just as his popularity began to rise and fans began asking for more screen time, something strange happened. The louder his laughs got, the closer he came to the exit. And when he finally vanished, the silence spoke volumes. One episode he was there, teasing co-workers, cracking jokes, turning wrenches. The next, he was gone. No send-off, no explanation, no mention of his absence. Tom Smith had vanished from Fast and Loud without a trace. For a character so integral to the show's personality, his disappearance was jarring. And for longtime viewers, it didn't make sense. There were no on-air goodbyes, no farewell clips, nothing to explain where the loudest man in the garage had gone. His partner in crime, Jordan Butler, disappeared alongside him. It was as if they'd been edited out of existence. Fans immediately took to forums, Reddit threads, and social media to ask the question no one at Discovery or Gas Monkey seemed interested in answering. Where's Tom Smith? Speculation ran wild. Some believed he had quit. Others assumed a blow-up behind the scenes had led to a sudden firing. Some even theorized that Tom had violated a contract or gotten into legal trouble, though no such evidence ever surfaced. The real story, harder to find than anyone expected. Meanwhile, Discovery Channel and Gas Monkey Garage stayed quiet. Neither Richard Rawlings nor the network addressed Tom's absence publicly. It was a calculated silence, one that only deepened the mystery. How could someone so pivotal to the show's success just vanish? Tom's social media also went quiet for a time, fueling more rumors. Was he forced out? Silenced? Dealing with something behind the scenes? The lack of transparency turned a cast shakeup into something more sinister, a mystery begging for answers. But eventually, Tom would begin to speak, carefully, cautiously, and with just enough honesty to confirm what fans had suspected all along. His departure wasn't a happy accident. It was a consequence of crossing a line the show's creators never wanted crossed. Tom Smith didn't stay silent forever. After months of fan speculation and social media uproar, he started dropping breadcrumbs, small admissions in interviews, cryptic comments on Facebook, and carefully worded responses to fan questions. And the picture that emerged was far darker than the sanitized world of reality TV would admit. Tom and Jordan Butler weren't written out. They were fired. According to Tom, he and Jordan had butted heads with management behind the scenes, not just once, but repeatedly. The issue? A combination of creative interference, toxic work conditions, and what Tom referred to as a lack of respect for the people actually doing the work. In one particularly telling moment, Tom hinted that he had been reprimanded for standing up for other crew members during filming, questioning decisions made by producers or management. That, apparently, was the beginning of the end. Insiders suggest there was a heated confrontation, possibly with Richard Rawlings himself, that sealed their fate. While the details remain locked behind NDAs, Tom's tone when addressing the subject was always measured, but firm. He didn't go out guns blazing, but he didn't pretend it was friendly either. Tom stated in one video that he was told, "You don't tell the boss what to do." That quote alone fueled rumors that the real conflict wasn't with Discovery, but with Richard. Had Tom challenged the power structure at Gas Monkey? Had his growing popularity made him a threat to the face of the franchise? Whatever the truth, the result was clear. Tom and Jordan were let go, not with a farewell episode, but with silence and contracts designed to keep them quiet. The man fans loved for being real had pushed back in a world that only wanted controlled chaos. and it cost him everything. After being abruptly fired from Fast and Loud, Tom Smith didn't retreat quietly. Instead, he and Jordan Butler resurfaced in 2014 on a new Discovery Channel show, Misfit Garage. Marketed as a spin-off, or more accurately, a rebellion. Misfit Garage was built around the idea of the guys Richard Rawlings didn't want. It was raw, scrappy, and seemed to offer Tom and Jordan a shot at redemption on their own terms. At first, the premise had potential. Misfit Garage promised to bring back the energy, humor, and authenticity that Fast and Loud had started to lose. The crew operated out of the newly formed Fired Up Garage, where they aimed to build and flip cars in a less polished, more grassroots style. Tom was front and center. His comedic timing, offbeat ideas, and no-nonsense attitude instantly reconnected with fans. There was a buzz. Fans who missed Tom's presence on Fast and Loud tuned in, hoping this would be his comeback. Discovery seemed to be behind it, and early episodes teased a rawer, grittier take on car culture. The chemistry between Tom, Jordan, and their new crew gave the show an underdog spirit. They weren't Gas Monkey, and they didn't want to be. They were misfits, and that was the whole point. But beneath the surface, something didn't sit right. While Misfit Garage was marketed as a rebel's return, some viewers began to suspect it wasn't quite as independent as it seemed. The show still aired on Discovery. The format still felt scripted, and behind-the-scenes whispers suggested the production was tightly controlled, maybe even more so than Fast and Loud. Was Misfit Garage really a fresh start, or just a way for Discovery to contain the backlash from Tom's firing? As Misfit Garage rolled into its second and third seasons, cracks began to show. The raw, unscripted spirit fans had hoped for started to fade. Builds dragged. Drama felt forced. And Tom, the wild, hilarious heart of the show, seemed increasingly subdued. The man who once lit up screens with spontaneous outbursts and off-the-wall antics now looked frustrated. Tired, even. Behind the scenes, the same problems Tom hinted at on Fast and Loud were rumored to be happening again. Tight production controls, scripted arguments, unrealistic deadlines, creative decisions made by network execs instead of mechanics. For someone like Tom, who thrived in chaos but hated being told how to be chaotic, it was a perfect storm of disappointment. Viewers noticed the shift. Online forums and YouTube comment sections turned skeptical. Some accused Discovery of watering down the show. Others believed the network had set up Misfit Garage to quietly fail, creating just enough distance from Fast and Loud to appease fans, while never letting the spin-off grow too big. Ratings began to dip. Storylines grew stale. And unlike Fast and Loud, which had a built-in marketing machine and merch empire, Misfit Garage lacked the same reach. It started strong but never found its footing. By 2018, the show quietly disappeared from Discovery's lineup. No finale, no closure, no formal cancellation. Just silence. Again. For there were no press releases, no interviews, no big goodbye. Just like after Fast and Loud, Tom faded into the shadows, leaving behind a trail of speculation and unanswered questions. For a while, he remained somewhat active on social media. He posted updates about life in Texas, talked cars, shared memories with fans, and hinted at opening a new shop. There were moments of hope. Fans thought maybe he'd finally found the freedom to do things his way, without network interference or TV contracts. But gradually, even those updates slowed, then stopped. Interviews he gave during that period painted a clear picture of a man burned by fame. He spoke openly about the stress of reality TV, the creative battles with producers, and how little control he had over the final product. His tone wasn't bitter. It was tired, like someone who had tried to play the game and realized it wasn't built for people like him. There were brief mentions of him trying to return to building cars locally. A few fans spotted him at car events or heard he was working out of a modest garage again. But the larger-than-life personality that once brought so much joy to Fast and Loud, that version of Tom seemed to be gone. Some speculated that the NDAs from Discovery and his past conflicts with Rawlings kept him from speaking freely. Others believed he simply had no interest in returning to the spotlight. Whatever the reason, Tom Smith, the man who once stole every scene he was in, chose silence over spectacle. And in an industry built on image, that silence said more than any comeback ever could. Despite being one of the most recognizable personalities to ever walk into Gas Monkey Garage, Tom Smith's name has never once been directly addressed by Richard Rawlings since his firing. Not in interviews, not on social media, not even in passing. The silence is deafening, and for fans, suspicious. Because where there's smoke, there's often a fire smoldering just out of sight. Rumors of a serious fallout between Tom and Richard have circulated for years. While details are locked behind NDAs, insiders have hinted that Tom's firing wasn't just a management decision, it was personal. Multiple sources suggest that tensions between the two had been rising long before Tom's final episode. One alleged argument reportedly turned heated enough to make producers step in. Another claim? That Tom was becoming too popular, and that his off-the-cuff personality clashed with Richard's carefully curated brand image. Fans noticed the shift. As Tom's screen time increased and his following grew, Richard seemed to pull back. Jealousy? Control? Maybe both. Richard Rawlings is a businessman, first and foremost. Fast and Loud was his empire, and having another strong personality taking the spotlight may have threatened that balance. To this day, Richard has never acknowledged Tom's firing publicly. It's a calculated omission, one that protects the brand but deepens the mystery. And while Tom has remained relatively respectful in his comments, it's clear the two haven't reconciled. There are no reunions, no collaborations, no bury the hatchet moments. Whatever happened between them, it fractured something in Fast and Loud that was never quite repaired. Because when Tom left, he didn't just exit a garage, he broke away from a power structure that may have never truly wanted him to rise in the first place. Even years after his disappearance, Tom Smith's name still echoes through the Fast and Loud fan base. Scroll through old YouTube clips, Facebook groups, or Reddit threads, and one question always reappears. Where's Tom Smith? The attachment fans had to him wasn't fleeting. It was emotional. He wasn't just a funny mechanic. He was the everyman, the heart, the one who made the show feel real. For many fans, Tom was more than comic relief. He was a break from the egos and overproduced drama. He represented the chaotic charm that made early episodes of Fast and Loud so memorable. When he left, the tone of the show shifted. It became cleaner, colder, more businesslike. Some argue it became a show about cars instead of a show about people. That kind of integrity doesn't always get rewarded in reality television. In fact, it often gets erased. His firing, his silencing, and his vanishing act from the public eye weren't just unfortunate, they were calculated. The NDAS, the lack of official statements, the sudden spin-off that never fully supported him, all of it points to a truth darker than most fans want to admit. Tom Smith was a liability to a tightly run media machine. Not because he failed, but because he wouldn't fall in line. And yet, through all of it, Tom never lashed out. He never sold out. He didn't go on an angry media tour or write a tell-all book. He quietly walked away, choosing peace over spotlight. That silence, in many ways, became more powerful than any episode he ever filmed. The legacy of Tom Smith isn't written in ratings or reruns. It's written in the laughs he sparked, the fans he inspired, and the irreplaceable energy he brought to the screen. When he left Fast and Loud, it wasn't just the end of a character, it was the end of something real. Because when Tom disappeared, Fast and Loud was never truly loud again.